Welcome to the Sample Chapter Podcast, the show where authors read a sample chapter from one of their books. Here's your host, Jason A. Meiske.
Hello, my friends. Hey, welcome back to the Sample Chapter Podcast. This is episode 197, and this week we are featuring realistic, epic fantasy, and sci-fi author W.D. Kilpatrick III. W.D. is an award-winning author out of Utah. We're going to be discussing what makes realistic fantasy, which is what he likes to write, and the fevered dreams that led to his books. These things and so much more coming up in just a couple of minutes. So stay tuned for that interview. You're going to really enjoy it, and it was a lot of fun. Really enjoyed talking to W.D. and look forward to everything he has to offer. Without further ado, let's hop on over to our interview. Hello, Sample Chapter listeners. Welcome back to a wonderful episode, one that I cannot wait to dive into. Today's guest is W.D. Kilpatrick III. He is an award-winning and critically acclaimed internationally published writer with works appearing in print, online, radio, television, and starting his first publication credit at the age of 9, where he wrote an award-winning poem. He wrote his first novel at 12 years old and has a whole accolade of honors and awards. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome to the show, W.D. Kilpatrick III.
Hi.
Hi. Oh, man. You've got quite the list of honors and all that, and I can't wait to discover some of that. But how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Things are tooling along. The thing is, since I've had some novels published, the support from people like yourself and readers has really been amazing. It is really humbling. I have people that send me photographs of themselves holding my books and
nice.
That sort of thing, and it just really touches a nerve for me. To have all that work be appreciated is just gratifying. Isn't a good enough word to describe it.
Oh yeah, I haven't had anything to that level yet, but it's a good feeling whenever you find out that, who knows if it was the person you were talking to earlier or not, but then later on you find out you got a sale on Amazon or somewhere and like, oh, they really did like me. And it's a good feeling. And I look forward to the day that maybe somebody's putting on a Crocodile Dundee hat and showing me pictures of that they're dressing up like the Bandit from my own series and stuff. So
someone actually said something to me like that. They said, how's it going to be when you go to a convention and there are people dressed up like characters in your book?
Oh, yeah.
And I just stood there with my mouth open because the thought hadn't even occurred to me. It's just amazing. Some of the things that are out there, conventions and a lot of things like that really have made this a very positive experience.
So tell us a little bit about yourself. Are you a full-time author?
Not yet. That's my goal. A lot of people, they have all these goals about all these big and world-changing things. I'd like to make a living writing. I love to write. I love creating, and I've always been that way. And be able to just sit and do that, and just be able to be comfortable in knowing that that's there. That would be a great thing. You mentioned working from home when we were talking before the interview, and I do that, at least with COVID. I was teaching using Zoom, so that made it so that the lockdown wasn't as big of an impact as it has been for others.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'd love to be able to do that, to sit at home and write my books and just keep doing that and have things keep moving forward.
Oh, yeah. My gosh. And, what I really admire, too, is that you've always held on to that dream of writing, having your first publication credit at 9, your first novel at 12 years old, and being recognized from the L. Ron Hubbard's Writers of the Future contest. How did you hang on to that love without allowing life to kind of beat you down and I'm like, oh, I gotta work. I gotta do the day job and not write. How did you keep that alive within?
Well, as far as not getting beaten down, that for me anyway was not the most challenging part. I wrestled for 12 years Dan Gable says, once you've wrestled, then everything else is easy. And, I've dealt with a lot of things there as far as hard work and pain. And, and I had my success there. I made the Pan Am team in greco-roman. I didn't get to go because I got hurt, but I made the team. So that sort of thing, hard work and being able to endure, wasn't the most challenging thing. I did put a lot of my major publishing goals on hold for a few years because basically with 5 kids, that takes a lot of time. So I put things on the back burner a little bit while raising kids. And I still was doing freelancing in terms of news and short stories and that sort of thing. But it wasn't a question of can I or should I. It was just do it.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people say, well, wow, it just seemed to happen so quickly and so naturally and things like that. But I have a file folder with all of my rejection letters. It's about 3 inches thick. I keep them and I read them, because the ones that actually wasn't just a form letter, then where they actually made comments about why they said no to this particular piece, every one of those is a teaching opportunity.
Yeah.
In my case, a learning opportunity. And so I've been described before as just being very stoic about it. And I appreciate the observation from people who have said that, but, it still hurts when it happens. But, like I said, with wrestling, things happen. You get hurt and you got to suck it up and go back to work, because you just don't know if there's going to be a tomorrow.
Well, that's a good point. That's very well said too. And I think that's one of the things that kind of clicked for me. And I've longtime listeners have heard me tell this before, but 6 years ago when I found out I was going to be a grandfather the first time, that's what triggered me to be like, oh man, I got to get serious. I wanted to be an author by now. I'm supposed to have books out, and I had always wanted to finish writing. And I was like, yeah, okay, you know what? Enough watching the TiVo first thing in the morning, or the DVR, or playing games or something, or whatever. That's going to be my writing time. And I made it happen from there. And it was just like, nobody's going to write the book for me. I got to do it myself. And, so-called living the dream ever since.
And, the thing with the writing is that I never stopped writing. I was still going at it. And so like Crown Prince, I actually started writing the first draft of it 9 years ago. And I wrote the first draft of all 8 books in the series. And then there were places where I thought, okay, I'm going to flesh this out later. So I'd go back. And, when it came time to do revisions for actual publication, and that's actually what I was doing right before talking to you, was on book 3. I was doing some little tweaks on the last chapter, because that is due out in December. I am trying to do, a double dunk. I've got 2 books that are scheduled to come out in December. And one is book 3, Demon Seed, and the other is a science fiction novel that's unrelated that is called Paleface.
Oh, nice. Okay. So you like do you like writing like that, splitting it up between epic fantasy and sci-fi? Is it kind of a refresher to change it up?
It does kind of get my juices flowing again, switching from one to the other. The foundation of sci-fi and fantasy really is the same, that they tend to be quest books in both cases. And in both cases, they use distortion or exaggeration in order to make a point more clear. That tool is the same in both genres. Sci-fi can be a little faster for me because it doesn't necessarily require the same amount of research. I do, with my fantasy writing, I do like to do a lot of research that in terms of world building. You may not know that that is the foundation when reading it, but for example, in Crown Prince and the New Blood Saga, the foundation of that is in Celtic culture. I have another series that I've been writing that is based in Viking culture. I like to have as an underlying layer that may not be obvious to a reader, but if it wasn't there, I think it would be obvious.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, and that sounds incredible. I love the idea of having the different backgrounds and coming in there too, that with throughout the New Blood. That's really amazing. And I gotta say too, looking at this cover for book 3, Demon Seed, that's thrilling indeed. That is really exciting looking.
Well, I'm sitting here trying not to giggle because what you're doing right there is exactly the kind of thing that just gives me such a charge. When readers come up and say things, and you just hit that same exact chord, and it's just it's much appreciated to have comments like that.
So tell us about the New Blood. You've got 2 books so far. The one we're going to hear from today, Crown Prince, and then Order of Light, book 2, and of course the forthcoming Demon Seed, book 3, coming out in December. Tell us about this, I don't know, fever dream, the thing that held on to you for 9 years before it finally came out.
It's interesting that you said dream, because that is where the story started, is that I had a recurring dream. It just kept coming in, and sometimes it was every day, sometimes it was every week or a few weeks, but it would come back and it would have the same vibrant image. I would literally wake up in tears because it was just so gripping. And so I finally realized, wait a minute, I got to write this. So I started writing, and I realized, at first I was thinking I was going to write a book. And then I realized, well, to get the same sort of emotional impact from writing that scene, it's going to take more than a book. So then I thought I'll write a trilogy. And then I thought it would be 6 books. And then it's 8. And the actual dream takes place in book 4. But it needed to have this foundation in order to build it up. So when you're dreaming, you know all that. It's instant. You know all the backstory. You know all the relationships. You know everything that's involved because it's right there, and it's just shoehorned into your brain in a dream. But when you're writing it, it takes work. So that was where it started, that I had that dream. And then the main character, Nathar, is a character that I've been thinking about writing something with this type of character since college. When I was in college, one of my undergrad majors was in philosophy. I was fascinated by Socrates, and Socrates would go into a trance-like state where he called it being seized by the demon of philosophy. And he would kind of go into a trance, and then he would come out of it with some epiphany, some sort of ground-shaking flash of enlightenment. And so I wanted to have something along those lines in a character that I wrote someday. So Nathar is seized by the demon of sight. And what happens is that he can see the future. He can see into the past. Sometimes he'll touch things or touch a person and get flashes of their future or their history. And so because he has sight, then he is the guardian of Merrick. Merrick is a nation where mankind was created. And so he's the guardian of Merrick, and his father was the guardian before him. And so for 2 generations, they have seen the future where the royal family is going to be overthrown. And so they've been planning for 2 generations to escape with the crown prince in order to be able to bring him back to the throne. And so that is, in a nutshell, that is Crown Prince, that the opening chapter is his birth, going through to following Nathar and the wet nurse Darshell as they are escaping the capital of Merrick and trying to find a place to basically hide out until the Crown Prince can grow up and be restored to the throne.
Wow. Okay. Oh my gosh. And I mean, as much as I want to hear about it, we don't want to spoil Crown Prince or Demon Seed and what's coming next, but sounds incredible, man. So, and you've got these described as realistic epic fantasy. How do you come to that? What makes it realistic for you?
That's a great question. As far as the realism, there are a lot of fantasy novels out there that they are so far removed from what is more real life that it's not realistic anymore. So my characters, there are things that they have to deal with that are real life. They have real needs, they have real responsibilities, they have ramifications to the things that they do. And the other thing with that is that magic is not like fireworks. that there are a lot of books where magic is such a huge part of it that it takes over and it can overshadow everything else, in my opinion. And so in my books, magic is much more practical. It's more subtle. I had a reader who said that you claim that magic is more subtle in your work, but if you look and you know how to look, it's everywhere. And the thing with that is that when she said, if you know how to look, that to me said I was successful. Because if you know how to look, otherwise you'd miss it.
Yeah.
And she said something about catching glimpses of things out of the corner of your eye when you're reading it. And again, that is the kind of thing that I have in mind. So magic is much more of a tool, but at the same time, there is one word that you will never read in any of those 8 books. And that one word is magic.
Okay. Wow. That's fascinating. And I love that you've got that play coming back and forth between the readers who are telling you things that are just what you're looking for, but also, what you're wanting them to read into, but also it feels like it's kind of giving you a little bit of like, you know what, you're right at the same time. And that's awesome that you got readers who are feeding into the story of what you're looking to do with New Blood. So that's amazing.
It really is. And sometimes people mention things and I was like, whoa, you saw that? And that also is a great thing. And one of the things that, in terms of how I write, there are writers out there who criticize me because I don't outline my books. I have an idea of where they're going, but I don't write a physical outline. Mm-hmm. And the reason for that is if it surprises me and I'm the one writing it, it'll definitely surprise readers.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, there are things where I will go through and I'll get an idea and I'll write that but that affects something that happened earlier. So I go back and I rewrite that and I'm okay with it.
I completely agree. I'm the same way. I used to try to do outlines. I spent years spinning my wheels trying to outline my first book, and it just got me nowhere. I was rewriting the first couple chapters over and over again and trying to think of the outline. And I finally just put it all down one day, and it was just in time for NaNoWriMo. And I thought, you know what? I'm just going to feel the book out and let it tell me where it's supposed to go and see if I can't do this. And I did. I was able to do it in NaNoWriMo. I just kind of felt my way through it. And that's what I've done ever since. Like, I know where the book's supposed to go. Usually I know how it's supposed to end, but I just don't know the journey to get there. And it's a lot of fun to discover it along the way.
Oh, absolutely. If you're planning something that's supposed to be creative and all that, and you put so much time into planning it, it takes the spontaneity out of it. To me, that's just not as fun.
Yeah.
I had an author who I told him I don't outline my books, and he started telling me that, boiled down in a nutshell in one sentence, I'm not a real writer. And I just said, well, what fun is that?
Yeah.
Shut him right up. I don't know what to say. So it's and there are people who have said things like that to me, and it's just, well, we all have our method.
Yeah. That's the whole thing right there I'd say respectfully, I think a writer who has to have rules to write by, well, I can't say they're not a real writer because, like you said, they have their own methods. So that's the best way to put it is like you said, everybody has their own methods, and some of us have rules and some of us don't, but you're still telling the story, and that's what matters.
Right.
Well, so you've got 8 books planned with New Blood. You've got the sci-fi coming out in December. What was the name of that again?
Paleface.
Paleface. Okay. Now, how does Paleface, how does that name fit in with a sci-fi? That's interesting.
Well, the main character, he's kind of a classic. I don't want to say fish out of water, but he doesn't fit in. He doesn't fit. He is born on a reservation in New Mexico, but he went to white man's school. So his education is different than his peers, but he is still trying to hold on to elements of his culture and his history. what happens is that he has a interaction, let's call it an interaction, with a UFO. I've described it as a interstellar traffic accident. He is hit by a UFO and severely injured, and then the rest of the story is him trying to get his mind around it. And one of the things that Dave Wolverton said about it, he's a pretty famous author in my opinion, but he said how he loves how the main character Hector, in the end, Hector ends up comparing these aliens who are very pale to a lot of things that have happened in history between the Indians and the white man, that he puts the aliens and the white man in the same category. And so that's where it comes in, is that he is talking about, he's in his mind, he's thinking about these aliens and they're very pale. And then he just stops and kind of laughs and says they're pale faces. But that's how the title came about. So there's a lot of contradiction in terms of story and characterization, but it's him trying to figure out what happened to him and deal with it. And that he, in essence, is the smoking gun for proof that alien life exists.
Okay. Wow, that sounds fascinating. So what, once the sci-fi is out and book 3 is out, I'm assuming you got book 4 from New Blood. Anything else, or are you looking to stretch your writing abilities anymore?
Well, I'm always writing. I'm always writing. And it's one of those things that a few summers ago, we had a high school reunion, and my first book had just come out, and all these people coming up to me and saying how they remembered me walking around with my red 3-ring binder, and how I would just stop someplace and write, or having it with me at lunch and just writing, or that sort of thing. They always saw me writing at the drop of a hat and always having that with me. I didn't know that it was that obvious, but that is what it was. And I still have that 3-ring binder, as a matter of fact. It's beat to death, but I've still got it. And so I'm always writing something. And a lot of the stuff right now, that with working on the books being published and putting in all the time and effort in terms of promoting the work, I'm not doing as much new writing as much as bringing the existing work up to par. And the thing with that is that my wife, I guess this isn't that uncommon, but I read my stuff to my wife, and she calls them her bedtime stories. Mm-hmm. And right now, since there isn't as much new stuff being written, she's not getting her bedtime stories. And she reminds me of that fairly often, that she misses her bedtime stories.
Nice.
I've got novels that are in the bullpen. I've got 20 or so, 25, that are sitting there waiting to get the same treatment as these.
Outstanding. Well, where can people go to find out more about you and follow you?
My website is kilpack.net. That's KILPACK.net. And that has information about my books, information about me if you care. It's got links so that you can order it on various platforms. It's got links to interviews and podcasts, and it's kind of the communication hub for my dreams.
Yeah, it's a fantastic website. I love all the links on here, and all the it's something you did is something that I do as well, as I put up any kind of interviews and that I've been on, and that's a great way to share the not only the that you've been on another show, but also to share the love with that show itself and keep them going too, keep some exposure for that show. So that's fantastic, and glad to see that you do that. And you have your good reads as well. I see. I'm going to follow you on there.
Well, that's awesome. Yeah, I the thing with the podcast and all that is that if they're willing, like yourself, if you're willing to try and help me, then I'll absolutely try to help back. There's enough animosity in the world, and so if you've got people that you can just work together and try to make things better for everyone involved, then why not?
I couldn't have said that better myself, and I agree with you. Rising tide raises all ships. That's The whole idea behind this show is to try and highlight authors like yourself and find just give us all a platform to share and talk to everybody. Hey man, thank you so much for coming on. And by the way, I want to wish you a happy belated birthday. I saw yours was just a couple of days ago. Mine's coming up in a few days myself. So happy belated birthday, and good luck with book 3 coming out.
Oh, thank you.
So all right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, time for me to step aside and hand the floor over to our guest, W.D. Kilpack, with book 1 of the New Blood saga, Crown Prince.
Crown Prince by W.D. Kilpack III. You, Niels gasped, incredulous, his voice breaking. Anyone but you. Your disappointment will not last long. Nathar struck, sword starting high, then altering course to slash almost straight down. Each motion mechanical, automatic from years of training. Niels made to parry the high stroke, then followed the downstroke, partially blocking it. Nathar's point sliced through the edge of the captain's thigh, pushing down the metal plate that had been intended to protect it, spilling bright red on the hardwood floor. The captain's eyes widened as his legs sagged, no longer able to support his weight. Nathar's sword whipped back up, then stabbed straight toward the other's throat, efficient as a striking adder. Niels twisted at the shoulders and snatched at the blade with his free hand while he fell, his leg buckling under him. His grip on Nathar's sword blade held, his arm trembling while his skin paled. Red ran in a thick rivulet from his hand down the blood gutters on either side of the blade. Why? Niels scarcely whispered, staring up at Nathar. A tendril of bloody blonde hair peeled away from his brow and fell away. Gods have mercy on you, Guardian. Your sight is true. I hope you have read it rightly. Nathar did not so much as blink as he yanked back on his sword, and 2 of the blond man's fingers fell to the floor, blood spurting into the air. At the same moment, Niels lunged forward, yelling, "Verlaine!" Nathar twisted at the waist, evading the stab meant for his heart, and sunk his own sword point into the side of the captain's neck. There was a pained cry. A woman's voice. From behind him. Niels toppled toward the ground, sword clanging as his dead fingers released it. The fresh corpse's weight pulled at the guardian's sword until he lifted the pommel, and the body thumped heavily to the hardwood. Nathar lifted his newly bloodied blade, face neutral. Then he blinked, cold expression melting away as he turned. Darshell was there, back bowed forward and arms clenched protectively over the baby. A wide slash across her back ran from one shoulder blade to the other. Red already rolled down from the cut in thick rivulets, brightly soaking her white shirt. Had she not turned to the side to cover the baby with her body, she and Bakari both probably would have been run through. "Nathar," she said, voice weak, and stumbled forward a step. "Nathar?" Voices rose all around them. He was not sure if all had gone silent to watch the Guardian of Merrick fight the captain of the guard to the death, or if he simply had not heard them while enveloped in the melee. "Demons of chaos," he roared, catching her elbow and dragging her forward. "Stupid woman! I told you to go!" I tried. You did not try," he yelled, kicking the door to the kitchen so hard that it came free of its hinges. Then he understood. 2 bearded men were there with bloodied axes. 2 of Elaine's soldiers were there as well, on their knees. Their bowed heads rose as Nathar entered, and the axemen lifted their weapons. "Lord Nathar," the 2 men gasped, seeing the blood on his sword. The relief in their voices was a physical blow. "I tried," Darshell repeated, but her voice was weak. Nathar glanced at her. Her skin, normally dusky to the point of being the color of copper, was much more pale. His emerald gaze returned to the men he had surprised. The axemen were afraid, both stepping backward. Verlaine's men were smiling, despite the blood soaking one's sleeve and smearing half the other's face. Nathar crossed the kitchen in 2 steps, dragging Darshell with him, threw open the door to the cellar, and was through. He bolted the door and headed down the stairs before anyone could even raise a cry of alarm. He wanted to take the steps 2 or 3 at a time, but Darshell was fighting him, both because she could not see and because she was weakening. He could tell by the way her resistance declined with each step. "You killed him. Her. Them both," she finally managed, then lost her footing. She screamed, but Nathar kept her on her feet with his free hand. As if in response, he heard a cry of pain and a wild voice crying, "Nathar!"
All right, that was W.D. Kilpatrick III reading a sample chapter from Book 1 of the New Blood saga, Crown Prince. The book is available right now. You can pick up the first 2 books, Crown Prince and Order of Light. And don't forget that Book 3, Demon Seed, with that amazing cover, that's coming out real soon here in just a couple of weeks in December. So hop on over to his website. The link is in the show notes so that you don't miss out. Hey, don't forget to also click the link in the show notes for our sponsors and podcast friends alike. And hit that subscribe button so that you don't miss out next time when I'm back with a all-new author, a new book, and a brand new sample chapter. Take care, everyone. Be healthy and have a happy Thanksgiving.